And a very good evening to everybody. Welcome to another of our Spiritualism Lyceum nights. They're growing immensely popular, and it's a range of evenings where we have so many wonderful guests to share their knowledge, their understanding, or techniques on the subject of spiritualism. Really a great pleasure to talk to a lady tonight who I have seen demonstrate online a couple of times. I've never really come into her orbit, so I'm really looking forward to tonight. The reason we're late coming on tonight is because we were busy gassing, so that's always a good sign.
Oh dear, I'm sorry, that was my fault, sorry. Exchanging horror stories about chairpersons.
Yes. So it's a very great privilege and honour to welcome the very Reverend Lyn Gibb-de to our evening. Reverend Lyn, it is absolute delight to have you with us. Thank you for agreeing and thank you for being here tonight.
No, thank you for asking me. I'm looking forward to speaking with everybody. I can see that there's sort of some comments. I won't be able to sort of answer them, of course, online or something, but I can, if you tell me what people want to know, I can answer them and so on and so forth.
Well,
yes, go on.
The wonderful thing about this platform I like, because when we're doing these talks and really getting to know somebody, we're not in that Zoom environment where everybody is. And a lot of people still are not very confident or comfortable with Zoom.
No.
I do like this environment because we have the comments and people, please, as you're listening, very welcome to the room tonight. If you do have any questions arising for Reverend Lyn, please post them in the comments page and we can bring them up on screen just like this and deal with them as they come up, or when a suitable space appears in the conversation. So we've got some lovely people joining us, some of our regulars. Good evening, Jamie, Jennifer, Susan, Donna, Pamela, Mary, Sam, Gail, Mary, hello darling, Mary Dixie. Reverend Lyn, I don't research our guests to any great depth. And that's not a laziness thing. First of all, actually, I'm very fortunate that the people that I've approached, they just feel right. So we've been very blessed to have such wonderful speakers talking on a wide variety of aspects of spiritualism over the last 2 months now, coming up to. But I have seen some of your resume, and my goodness, what a resume that is. I'm going to cheat slightly and bring it up on my screen here. But we have absolutely... Oh dear. Well, I'm sorry, you put it out there. Amongst your spiritualism works, you're a contributor at the Psychic World newspaper and former psychic and spiritual advisor. Agony aunt, I like that. I do like that indeed.
I was.
And the first minister and founder at New Christian Spiritualist Society. And coming out of there, you are a very athletic lady, and there's obviously a huge love there for the ice rink and bandy, which apparently you play with a ball, not a puck. That's it. That's my knowledge gone out of the window. Oh, and there's 12 of you instead of 6. And also a traffic warden. So
I did that for 2 years.
Oh, well done.
That was when it was attached to the Metropolitan Police. We were civil staff attached to the Met.
Right.
In the old days, the olden days.
The good old days.
We were putting tickets on horses and carts.
Which end?
Now that would be saying, wouldn't it?
But no, I've said in the events page, you're a wealth of knowledge. We are so blessed in spiritualism for people and characters such as yourself. where you have.
Thank you. But Lawrence, what I said to you while we were chatting, or gassing as you called it, so adequately and aptly, you know, it's not that I know so much. It's just that because I exercise that mediumship that we all aspire to, and I access that knowledge that others have who are wiser than I in the realms of spirit. So that's how I didn't mind being, you know, an agony aunt, for instance, because I would ask, and I've always asked. And what I do know about this way of life is that we all understand that we don't know very much. And you know, it did tickle me when I read, you know, your stuff about me, about my amassed knowledge. A lot of the knowledge that I'm given, because I'm a medium, I'll pass it on and then promptly forget it. So you know, that's something else, of course, to look at. But yes, I have done rather a lot. But then, if you're blessed with many years of life on Earth, and if you are not idle, then you will, by the time you get to how much I am in Earth years, you will have done quite a bit, you know. So that's that's how it goes, really.
Yeah, and yes, forgive me then with the poor wording, but the experience.
No, it's not poor wording. It's just I just felt I would add to that dimension. By talking about it in a spiritualist way.
Absolutely wonderful.
You know, how we actually get our knowledge. That
indeed. Indeed, and I agree with you. I find that myself sometimes when I'm talking to people. You'll have a conversation, they'll come out and think, what have I just said? Because I have no idea. It just appeared. But you've got a great experience of seeing spiritualism throughout the years in its many highs and lows and glories. You did an absolutely wonderful podcast recently talking about the entertainment attachment to the word mediumship and spiritualism. And I absolutely, I know, but I love your fire, your passion, your sensibility about approach on that. And I thought, yes, this lady is really something. She knows what she's talking about. She's confident in herself. And she's got that experience and that knowledge as well, of her own acquired knowledge to support that.
Well, Lawrence, I did actually, on Good Morning Television, I think that's what it was called, or ITV Good Morning or something, Andrew Castle was interviewing me. He was a presenter of that at the time, about the Fraudulent Mediums Act and the ramifications when people were being advised by their organisations, would you believe, spiritualist organisations, mentioning no names, telling their members that they have to say they were doing this for entertainment purposes only, or as an experiment with no guaranteed results, medium studies. Otherwise, they could get prosecuted under this new Trade Description Act that was being brought in under the European directive that repealed. Our government decided to repeal the Fraudulent Mediums Act, which gave mediums protection. Also, because it said it was a Fraudulent Mediums Act, it presupposed, of course, that there were genuine mediums, and that's what we needed to practice our religion in the open. And say, yes, you know, we are genuine mediums. All of a sudden, that was taken away from us. The rug was pulled from under us in that respect. And people were stupid enough to believe that because it was repealed under this European directive, that it could all these, they advised the British government, as they did, you know, well, you don't need all these different acts to protect consumers. And they did, and the British government, somebody in the government decided that this was a good idea to get rid of the Fraudulent Mediums Act. Anyway, the thing is this, that I went out head to head against all those who were supporting the government and the Europeans telling us that we should repeal the act. And I was invited onto various radio programs and television. And on this particular occasion, I said in answer to a query about this that I am quite prepared to go to prison. I challenge anybody to arrest me now, because I will never say that what I'm doing is for entertainment purposes only, and I will never say that it's an experiment for which I don't expect a result. So please come and please come and arrest me now. And and on that, it faded me out.
Oh,
But the
really?
fact is that afterwards, now listen to this one. Andrew Castle shook my hand warmly and said, "That was great, absolutely great, Lyn." And he said, "I haven't told anybody, but my great grandmother was Annie Besant, and Annie Besant was a famous medium.
Yeah.
Look her up, people, if you don't know." But yes, so that was my rejoinder then. But the fact is this, that all these organisations started to sell everybody insurance. Wow. I kept saying, look, you can have all the insurance policies in the world for mediumship or healing. You do something wrong, you con people, you will get nicked. This is the old traffic warden Met Police thing coming out. It shows you what a nice person I was, you see. I've decided, what do I do for a job? I know what, I'll go and torment motorists, on behalf of the Metropolitan Police. And the thing is this, that, I was absolutely appalled that they should, tell their membership that this is what was it. I had lots of correspondence with the government at the time, and I have a couple of letters still lurking about that tell me that they cannot understand why, any mediums should think that this was relating to them. Because apart from anything else, people who actually pay for mediumistic services are not gullible people. They're people who've made a choice themselves. Whether or not they get a bad or a good reading is nothing to do with the government, and that is what I got. That is what I was told by the government. So you see, it was a total nonsense. The fact is this, if you look at some of these people who are practicing mediumship, on social media sites at the moment, on internet and so on, it used to be just the phone lines and all the rest of it. Who is to say whether they're genuine or not? And if people are getting, misled by people saying they're mediums when they're not, they do have a redress just in common law. But the fact is this, that if people are working as mediums in any genre, whether it's on a psychic phone line or on the social media or wherever they're practicing on a platform, when we are all allowed to do that, of course, again, there is no need whatsoever, if they are genuine, to say that they're doing it for fun, because they ain't. If they are doing it for fun, then let them say that they're not really mediums and they're just doing it for a laugh. So that is my opinion of that.
And a very
I think we've exhausted that now.
No, absolutely fine. I'll just share a very quick story. I was intrigued by some of these psychic hotlines, and they actually advertised once they were looking for readers. And I thought, okay, I'm going to apply for this because I just want to understand and know where they're coming from.
Yes, yes.
So I had a half-day course on how to keep people on the phone longer. Nobody asked me to do a reading for them, which I would have thought would have been part of the interview process. Nobody asked my credentials. It's all right. So what you want to do is when you're talking to them, don't run away with your voice, slow it down, because the longer they're on, the more you get paid. And I was just sat there thinking, okay, I wanted to know because there could be something in it in this movement. No, there isn't. But anyway, put that energy to one side and move on. In your expansive career working with spiritualism, I'm sure we were talking earlier, just before we went live, you were talking about David Nason, the son of Jesse
Oh,
Nason.
yeah.
I never actually met David, but Jesse used to come down to Paul Church when my parents ran it. And I loved Jessie Nason. She was like my mum's
Yeah,
sister. They were identical
yeah.
physically and their approach.
Wow.
The mediums of those times were something else, weren't they? They were a cut above. And I know today we've got some very competent and very good mediums coming forward. But of that era, there were so many, and the camaraderie that used to go on. And with the psychic press, they used to do like a big dinner dance once a year or something.
Yes, they did. And of course, well, Maurice Barbanel, of course, being the founding editor of Psychic News, he and his wife Sylvia, of course, wonderful, also in her own right. They used to, put on these promotional do's, and they would have things like Spiritualist of the Year, Medium of the Year, and they would they would have presentations. And I mean, that would not do now. I mean, there would be uproar. Can you imagine it if we said, right, who are we going to vote Medium of the Year? Who are we going to say Spiritualist of the Year? You can imagine the backbiting and the infighting, and maybe it went on then, but we just didn't know about it. But I actually have a horse, well, a replica actually of a horse that was presented to Doris Stokes by Maurice Barbanel at one of these do's. Gordon Higginson was presented with the same horse. What happened, apparently, Linda Dearsley, who ghost wrote all Doris Stokes's books. And for those of you who are too young to know, Doris Stokes is a wonderful, famous medium. Do look her up. And Linda was round at her house and she broke it. So she was so upset and she went and bought a replica of the same horse. Now, when Doris passed a few years after, there was an auction of her memorabilia, and Doris said to me from upstairs, go and get some of these things. And she made me bid for this horse, which I have got. And when Linda Dearsley came and visited me last year, because she wanted me to put me in her book called Voices. Oops, this is no good. I'm all wound up here in a thingy-bob. It's called Voices Everywhere. Here we are. Look, I've got her book here to hand. This is Linda Dearsley's book that she wrote. You see, Mysterious Doris Stokes, because she knew that Doris worked with me. She works with other people too, but she'd worked with me right from the off. And Doris told me to go and get this horse, which I did. And Linda told me the story about her actually breaking it. It wasn't actually the original horse. So there you are. So that sort of, it's a different kind of spiritualist story. But yes, yes.
I get the feeling in those days there was a great sense of fun amongst medium, and like you said and touched on, there would have been some animosity going on in the background and things, but there was a lot more fun, and there seemed to be a lot more communication amongst spiritualists as well at that time, which I find nowadays maybe not so. It's taken a leap forward as we've been forced to go online.
Yes, in a way, this lockdown situation, I've always said to people, look for the blessing in the curse. And as for this sort of dreadful pandemic, what has happened, as in every conflagration, spiritualism has come to the fore. In the First World War, it really took off because of the terrible carnage and the loss of life, earthly life that was going on. People were looking for answers, looking for communication, looking for evidence that their loved ones were still alive in that next life, in heaven, and relied on mediumship to get them that proof and evidence they needed. And then again in the Second World War, and of course, poor Helen Duncan was a casualty of that war as well, in another way, because
Yeah.
she was arrested and done for witchcraft, which of course led eventually to the inauguration of the Fraudulent Mediums Act. Not before time. And of course, the persecution of Helen Duncan led to her death, basically. But the fact is this: that every conflagration, every disaster that has struck this world since the advent of modern spiritualism in 1848 has seen a huge upsurge in our followers, in adherents, in people seeking the truth about the afterlife. And it's not been any different this time round. We've had this dreadful pandemic, and we have had an upsurge, haven't we, in interest in spiritualism, and people are now taking it seriously. And I think that's what matters. And it brings us around to that thing about being entertainment. We need to get rid of that label.
Very much.
Don't do it, people out there. Don't do it. Don't have anything to do with it. It's not entertainment. What we do is really crucial work.
Indeed.
To comfort and the fact is that all those old mediums that you talk about, that the factor, I think, that you could actually see the love coming off them. They didn't have any side. We call it side. I don't know what you'd call it. Not noses in the air and all that, and what they've got and how much money they were making or whatever. And they were humble people. They didn't go around like the big I ams, and they had this wonderful aura. And I think that's what we need, to get back to that and look at people and think, we love them and they love us back. And then you'll get that lovely warm feeling from people. And I think mediums need to know that more than anything, they need to love their congregation. They need to love the person they are giving communication to. I think, not just love because we talk about love, but to actually have that love and in a very solid way. And that's what you're talking about. When you're looking at those women, you've got that sort of motherly feeling coming off them. When you look at the men that were working, you have that sort of confidence that they exude, and that love for their fellow human beings that they exude. And I think that's what is so crucial to our spiritualist mediums and platform workers now.
Indeed, because both sexes exuded that maternal or paternal energy when they were up there. Down here on the south coast, we had some wonderful older mediums there's one who's still with us, fortunately, and no longer working. And when she used to give her stories, we always had her for the remembrance service. And she would talk about her childhood, growing up in Bewley and what was going on. And you just sat there enraptured with what was being said because that love was present. It was absolutely divine to watch. Absolutely. So we got
Lawrence, I'm seeing. Them upstairs said there's a question. I've looked over there and found it.
I've just seen it. The one from Jamie.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes. Well, it was a long journey, really. When I was very small, I was very drawn to sort of religious things and spiritual things. And, any time I went near a sort of a spiritual place, any sacred place, I felt this sort of cold chill come over me that I quite liked. And it was sort of like a draw. And I think if I'd have been born into a different family, perhaps I would have become a nun or something, But anyway, as it was, I was far from it. But, there you are. But how I became a reverend, I was steeped in spiritualism. As soon as I found it, I sort of dived in, plunged, I think, or I was plunged, shall we say, by them upstairs. I just came in as a curious inquirer to find out how it was done, and that was it. I was grabbed. Anyway, I found that this was my spiritual home, spiritualism. And the more I looked into it and the more I saw it and the more I looked at how there were different divisions in spiritualism and how there was a very sort of anti-Christian feel about some of those organizations. And I tried to work it all out by reading as much as I could, observing as much as I could, trying to absorb without judgment or criticism of either of any of these points of view, but trying to find my own way through. And really, I was so drawn to the teachings of Jesus that I could not really tear myself away from that, because they had been something that I'd taken notice of all my life. And I wasn't born into a Christian family. I'm a Jew, and I was born into a practicing Jewish family, and liberal though. So I was able to sort of find out about various other religions and spiritualities, and without any criticism of them. And in fact, I loved the nuns that I came into contact with when I was a child, and all sorts of things like that. So I knew within me that I had this tug to go that way. And of course, being a Jew and being Jewish, you know, I sort of held on to that Old Testament stuff, and particularly the one where it says, do not consult with mediums or spirits, and do not be one. No daughter of Israel should do it. And you know, but again, I had a couple of things in my life that I really had to come to terms with that were diametrically opposed, actually, to the things that are in that Old Testament. Some of the "thou shalt nots," and I was also homosexual. Try that one on.
Oh.
You know, so like, not only was I an abomination, you know, I was a definite abomination to the Lord, apparently, on various counts. So I managed anyway. I managed to sort of, you know, stagger through life, and there I was, you know, this new spiritualist and getting into it all and everything, and there was just this pull, and I had a feeling that I would like to take this further. So I was actually ordained as a spiritualist, not a Christian spiritualist. I was ordained by a spiritualist organisation that is just sort of general. You know, they didn't say anything about religion other than, you know, if you were a spiritualist, you could be ordained, and they had a very liberal outlook themselves. And that was the United Spiritualists. And they actually were a breakaway group, an organisation. They were a breakaway from the Corinthian Church and Healing Association. And Reverend Ron Jones, who founded the Corinthians, actually broke away from the SNU to found that, because he was a Christian, and he was fed up with the sort of what he saw as anti-Christian attitudes in the SNU. So and then the United Spiritualists, Eddie Brame and Alan Bowley, they broke away from the Corinthians and formed the United Spiritualists. So there I was, this sort of, you know, United Spiritualists appealed to me, and I decided, yes, I would become a minister. So that's what happened. And a couple of weeks after I left Psychic News, because I left there in the summer of 2003, I was ordained at my original Spiritualist church, where I'd gone to find out how it was all done, Lyceum Spiritualist Church, and I was ordained there, and then you know, one develops, and I still felt this real pull towards the Christian way of life, but the early Christian. I'm not talking about the stuff of, you know, the high church here, the Orthodox established churches. I'm talking about early Christianity, the spiritual pathway. And what happened? I was approached by the Corinthians, and they had been in trouble with their church, their headquarters down in Hailsham, which had been closed because they had had a problem with the people running it for them, the ministers there, and so on and so forth, who sort of left them in the lurch. And they asked if I would help, and I thought about it and asked them upstairs, and I said yes. So there I was. They accepted my ministry and my ministership, and there I was with the Corinthians. And I did, along with Kathy, my partner, reopen their headquarters church, Primrose Hall, and made it a thriving congregation again before I actually left. But by the time I left, I knew that the Christian pathway was for me, and I decided as well that I would start another actual Christian spiritualist organisation. So, and what it means to me to be a Christian spiritualist is to look at the early church, the early teachings and example of Jesus, and to say that I think that what he taught, the basics, were something that I resonated with, and particularly his teachings about the afterlife. I think that the new Christianity, modern Christianity, we could say from 300 years after after Jesus lived, they decided to formulate it, didn't they? They all got together and formulated it and decided what books of the Bible would be appropriate or not, and what Gospels would be included and what would not. And I think that the early followers of Jesus and the spiritual way, I like to think that my new Christian Spiritualist Society echoes that, and that we don't believe that you have to believe in anything in order to receive eternal life, like the Orthodox Christians say. But we think that, obviously, everybody inherits eternal life as a fact of life, and you don't have to be anything in particular to have that. But the Christian way is one that I like. I could say I love it. And it was a very big step for me, really. But then I think it was a very big step for Jesus and his disciples and his followers too, because, the majority of them, in the first place anyway, all of them, more or less, were all Jews, like Jesus was himself. And it's a very big deal indeed to actually strike out and say, this is the pathway I'm going to take, which is somewhat different to the one that you are on. So there you are. So that's what it means to me to be a Christian spiritualist minister.
Wonderful.
Is that okay?
Okay. It'll do. It was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, Jamie, for that question there. I do read an awful lot when I'm working on the platform from the Aquarian Gospel, because I find, to me, that's more in touch with the original essence of the life of Jesus than, if we look at the Bible today, how many rewrites has that had over the years where things are lost?
And the thing is this, that because I'm a journalist and an editor to boot, I can see, I could always see, I always had an eye for a paragraph or a word or a chapter or even a whole book. And you can actually see how the minds of those receiving the information have worked on their when they've inscribed the words down, and some of it is really, really wonderful, and some of it is obviously not. The fact about the Old Testament, the Bible is, and that's the one that Jesus knew, of course, and all his people, because there wasn't another one then. Because most of the reports and witness accounts and stuff like that were written down were actually written down after the event, and some many years after the event. Paul's letters, for instance, to various churches he set up, it was about 50 years after Jesus has actually been teaching. So, and that was sort of like the earliest, really. But the fact is this, that you can see very much that, the Old Testament is a history book. It tells the history, unvarnished history, horrible history of my people. In amongst the wonders and signs and amazing, communications that a load of Jewish mediums and healers got throughout those books of the Old Testament, there are loads of slayings and smitings and going to war and all sorts of stuff, because this is the history of a people who decided there was one God amongst all the heathens and pagans that they lived amongst, and they had to fight for everything. And so it's quite a bloody book. The Bible is bloody.
Oh yes.
And and that was the only book that Jesus and his lot knew. But because of their work, as they were living, they were writing a new one.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. But certainly, the people who wrote all those things down, and don't forget, they had to painstakingly, there wasn't even one of these old, do you remember the old Gestetners, the ink things, the rolling things, they had nothing like that. They just had, a hammer and chisel and stone, or they had, papyrus and things to etch words in. And Hebrew letters are very complex. And then not only Hebrew, it was all translated into flaming Greek and Latin. For heaven's sake, if anybody's tried to learn Hebrew, there are so many different words and so confusing, and they don't even use vowels for the most part. So you have to guess, like the old reading flashcards that you had for English, if any of you have learned English that way. And the word ruach, for instance, means spirit and wind. Now, don't start telling me that somebody had wind. Oh, I had a meal and I had wind. No, he got the spirit, But the thing is that I told somebody once, I was trying out my Hebrew. I was out in Israel, and I told somebody once I had a sore cupboard. Well, I thought I had a sore throat, you see. But Aaron and Garon, one is throat, one is cupboard. Can you imagine that in the Bible? Oh, I wonder if this is Aaron or Garon. But could I be cupboard or throat? So, I wondered why they were so mean to laugh at the fact that I had a sore throat. But apparently I'd said to them, I have a sore cupboard. So really, when it comes to writing down, copying Hebrew, good luck.
Yeah.
Somebody actually said something here about Jesus, who survived the cross and went quietly to India. That's been around for a long time, that story.
Yes, there we go, Charlie Linton.
Yes, I don't think that Jesus, if you look at the wonderful spiritual life of Jesus, he wouldn't need to initiate himself into anything. And I don't think that shamanism would have sat very, very happily on his shoulders had he survived the crucifixion in some way and gone to India. I'm very certain, and a lot of his disciples, his followers, I should say, would have gone to India, because there were a lot of Jews who lived in in around Asia, because Israel is in Asia, you know, it's not in Europe, by the way. People get confused because the Eurovision Song Contest. Israel is like an honorary European, but we're not. You know, Israel is in Asia. The next country to that separate, the next continent is Africa and North Africa. So there were lots of Israelites who went into North Africa, who spread out into further east, over to India, where they were welcomed. There are Indian Jews now who can trace their lineage way back. And I don't actually personally think that I haven't been told that that was the case. That's the other thing. You know, we're lucky. You know, if we develop our attunement to spirit, we can get information about things like that. And my lot upstairs, as I reverently call them, have not said anything like that happened at all. So, but I do think that on a practical earthly level, if you look at the attainment, the spiritual attainment and enlightenment of Jesus, if you just look at some of what he did and his words, he was not a shaman. He would not have done all that because he was too elevated a spirit. That I know that sounds a bit judgmental. I don't mean it like that. I'm just saying how it is. You know, there are all sorts of levels of spirit and all sorts of levels of attunement. And I think that, you know, shamanism is very much part of this earthly life. It's a bit too physical, perhaps, for somebody as elevated, you know, exalted as Jesus.
Well, one of the reasons I get very drawn to the Aquarian Gospel is because that goes into great depth his travels, which is not covered in the Bible, where he travelled all through Persia, through Egypt, through India, Tibet, and
yes, absolutely. I believe that too, because before Jesus' time, before he was born, we were captives in Babylon, and a lot of Jews, you see, stayed in Babylon, went to Persia. My family, I descend from Jews who were in Persia at the time of Daniel. You know, Daniel in the lion's den. Yeah. I named my youngest son Daniel after him. He's buried. He lived and died in Persia, in Shushan, which is where my family came from, my father's family. And I also saw in my DNA that I have also North African DNA as well, as a North African Jew. So I can understand very much that, you know, the Jews went all over the place, and actually, you know, some settled in these places. And so, yes, Jesus would have absolutely travelled around, I'm sure, even if it wasn't written down and captured by people who decided which books of the Bible they were going to keep, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So I'm certain that.
So Sue Townsend, very good question there, and it actually links in very nicely with the last.
Yeah, as spiritual are becoming more open to people who have their own version of spirituality. The resonation of Christ can also. Yes. Yes, I think so, yes. And I would say this, that although we call ourselves the New Christian Spiritualist Society, we include everybody who wants to enjoy our kind of spiritualism, which is a liberal spiritualism. You know, it's saying, you know, everybody who says they are spiritual people, you know, want to be spiritualists because we believe in life after death, regardless, and we believe that people can communicate back with us from those realms of light. Then yes, we should have we should include everybody. And I think the spiritualist movement generally, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you see, the spiritualist movement generally has always been divided up into sections of different groups and organisations, and and there I am talking about my own organisation, my own group, my own section. So for me, that is correct. We are very happy with everybody's notions as long as they understand and accept what being a spiritualist really is all about. So Christ consciousness, yes, and of course spirituality. Yes, because we are made. Our earthly bodies and ourselves in our fleshly form are made up of all the stuff that the universe, the material universe, is made of. And of course, we understand that spirit runs through all of it and all of us. But the earthly aspect is very, very important. Very important. If it wasn't important, there wouldn't be rules for us all to behave towards each other in certain ways. Yeah. And I think when it comes down to it, the golden rule, to love one another, they're talking about our earthly selves, aren't they? Yes, we can love everybody's spirit, but it's not so easy to love somebody who's in a filthy state, who's perhaps suffering the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, as Shakespeare would have called it, perhaps tramping around, filthy, whatever. It's not so easy to love people like that, is it? And no. It's easy to love people who are lovable. I think the earthly aspect of ourselves is very important. We have to understand that we are all earthly people. Yeah, so I think earth spirituality, anybody who's a medium, I mean, I was lucky, I got sent a couple of stones, shouldn't take them, from Avery to feel them and to give over what I got. And I got loads of stuff about that, about the people who'd visited, the people who were alive then and there. And when I was out in Israel, the stones out there, I could see loads and loads of people, who'd lived there. And they'd spent their earthly lives there. And I think, this country, Stonehenge, what people are feeling is the life, the earthly life of the people who lived at those times when they were using Stonehenge, for instance, the standing stones, as places of worship. So yeah. And I who doesn't love the sun?
yeah, definitely. I definitely fall in that category.
That's okay, Sue.
Yeah, no, that was a wonderful answer. Because we are all one. We're here at this time for whatever lessons, whatever projects that our spirit self needs to go through and to learn and adapt to and to take back home. And we are governed by this world in which we live. At this time, yes, we have that wonderful, amazing link with spirit to bring that inspiration in. But 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, we're still worrying about food on the table, roof over our head, bed to sleep on, and all that goes with that and supporting that. So yeah, very interesting. Stacey, do you believe that Jesus should walk this earth again and teach us more because we haven't really learned important lessons?
Why should he have to suffer again for us? I think that Jesus is still with us. That is the trick. He is still there. He hasn't gone anywhere. he said, he made a promise. He said, when I go, I will come back as the great comforter. I will come back as the Holy Spirit. And his teachings stand. They still stand. It's about acceptance of that. People need to learn their own lessons, and if we haven't learned ourselves that what he said was good and we should follow those lessons, then the fault is in us, and we can't expect Jesus to reincarnate just to teach us some more lessons that we should have already learned. No, I don't think that would be correct. So I think that I would say that perhaps to understand that Jesus is with us, is here among us, and he used to say, wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there I shall be also. He didn't say now and again, or in the next 10 years, or for a few years. That's forever. You know, and in the same way that God is and was and is and will be, you know, we're spiritualists. We understand that life is eternal, don't we? And Jesus taught that. And I think that as spiritualists, we have got to teach other people. We have to do that work. We have to walk this earth, and we have to teach people that this is the truth, that there is life after this life, that we need to make this world fit for everybody to live in without any prejudice or discrimination. Jesus said, love one another, and, you know, you will have eternal life. It was the truth. So it's still the truth. You know, the truth for all times has firmly stood. So it's up to us as spiritualists to take that teaching forward and to explain to people this has got to be it. You know, when Jesus actually gave a prayer, he said, say something like this, didn't he? And he said, you know, our Father who is in heaven. He didn't say it quite like that, you see, because Hebrew is a very different kind of language to English. Now, you might be surprised about that. But you see, you know, what you're saying is, like, God is in heaven. We want to make this world the same as heaven. He said, you know, in earth and heaven the same. Make the earth like heaven. And I think that instruction stands for all time. And this is what spiritualists have got to try and do, because we can say we are spirit now. Okay, we're in fleshly bodies, we're still spirit within, and we want to love the next person in spirit, and we love spirit, the great spirit, and this world would then not have it wars, because nobody would want to upset the next person. You know, it's just everything he said was the truth. So he doesn't have to walk the earth again in a body, because we understand as spiritualists that he has an etheric body. And as we all will have, and that he has been seen in that etheric body millions of times. Is that okay, Stacey?
No. I wanted to run around shouting and wave my arms in the air. I really did. because and trust me, everybody, we need to remember how to debate. And I'm not being rude or detrimental to anybody. It is a very common thing. We look for a saving figure, but actually, that figure is us. That figure is us. This is how we are at this time on this earth.
Mm.
And if we can
Yes.
abide by those spiritual and natural laws, we are our own savior without again any sort of heresy or detrimental to anybody's question. And as you quite rightly said, why come again? Because the teachings are there. They haven't disappeared. All right, the world has changed, but the basic concept of love one another. Somebody once was talking, and I found it fascinating, because somebody had actually asked them, they said, "What's your view of heaven?" And they said, "My view of heaven is very much like the earth, but except where we had listened to and stuck to the guidance of the great avatars throughout history, Jesus, Mother Teresa, various people like that." And I just thought, yeah, I really like that. That really resonates with me. We're all different. Different things will resonate with different people. But yeah, we have got the building blocks. We have got the knowledge. Do we use it? Look at the newspapers. Look at the headlines, But as the Reverend Lyn quite rightly says, we are spiritualists, and it's our job to be out there. And I'm not saying, stand up on top of your local supermarket and start shouting at people, but just gently with people. Bring those teachings forward.
Maurice Barbanel used to do just that. Maurice Barbanel, he used to take a soapbox to Hyde Park Corner, Speaker's Corner,
Yeah.
and there's famous pictures of him standing on his soapbox and this great big placard that says, "There is no death."
Fair enough.
And he would stand there every Sunday morning and be heckled and harangue the crowds about, life after death and spiritualism and everything. So yes, I think there probably is a case. I mean, now we don't have to do that. We do it, we do it as much as we can on social media, don't we?
Yeah.
And by this method. And you see, for all the spiritualists that are watching and hearing our words, there's got to be thousands of the general public who don't know about spiritualism, who may, stumble across these broadcasts and have their life enhanced while they're here as a result, and to be able to enhance other people's lives. At some point, it's got to be a domino effect, hasn't it? We just keep putting it out there,
Yeah.
putting it out there, and somehow or other it's got to get through. The trouble is, look, I know we're coming to time now, but the fact is this, that there are dark forces out there, and we have to acknowledge that. We can't bury our heads in the flaming sand all the time and pretend, everything is peace and love and light, because it surely isn't. You've only got to look around and to see human beings who seem to be imbued with some kind of evil, and even if it isn't their fault, whatever it is, because I believe that all children are born innocent, and it's what's put into them, what happens to them that shapes them as human beings. But the fact is this, that, we have to understand that there are adult human beings who wish nothing but evil. And that's on all various different levels. And we have to be aware of that. And we have to know that we have a fight on our hands, and we have to keep on putting it out there. And all the workers for the light, and by that I mean everybody who's on a spiritual pathway, whatever that pathway is, whatever the label it is that they belong to, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Jainism, all of it, everybody, Hindus, just every spiritual pathway there is. Let us understand as spiritualists that we are all of that one spirit, and so we should unite in that and try not to be critical of other people's religious beliefs, and particularly when they only want good for the world.
Exactly.
Ultimately, because there are just too many. There are too many wicked people, and we need to overcome that.
Definitely. I'm reading a very old book transcribed from Spirit in 1876, and there was one phrase in there which really stuck in my mind, and it said, the evil's greatest ally is the denial of its existence. And I thought, how true, how true.
Oh yeah. Margaret Thatcher had a little poem, didn't she, that she liked, and it was something about I saw a man upon the stairs the other night. He wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. Oh, how I wish he'd go away.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, it's sort of, but I think, nastiness is rife, and we have to combat that with the light.
Indeed.
The light will triumph. You have to, somebody like Mother Julian of Norwich, wonderful, wonderful, an anchorite, a great prophet. And she had information from them upstairs all the time. And she said, all things will be well. All manner of things shall be well. All will be well. And I think we must listen to that.
Definitely.
It'll give us strength. It gives us strength.
Definitely. And it does give us strength. It gives us strength, and especially at this time, because as we quite rightly discussed very early on here,
God calling on the phone, yes. Somebody's got keen ears. I don't know who it was. You see, I have 6 children, and they all speak to me every day, which is wonderful, either by phone or text messages or something. So that is definitely one of them, but I'm not looking.
Reverend Lyn, what absolutely fascinating, and we've only just scratched the surface there. We could go on for ages. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us here tonight.
Oh, shall I mention my book?
Oh, please. Yes, please. Yes, definitely.
If in case anybody's interested and they don't know, I've written this book. It's called the Spiritualist Handbook, and it says Reverend Lyn because that was my name before I got married. And it says it's a concise and extensive guide to spiritualism and all its practices. So it's got loads of stuff in there. It's even got, hang on. I think my guides are telling me that, oh no, I've still got the thingy-bob there. That's good. That it's time to go, probably. But anyway, I probably wasn't supposed to plug my book. Well, perhaps, I mean, if I don't say, people won't know. And also, if they're interested in the society, it doesn't cost you anything. www.newchristianspiritualistsociety.com. It's got loads of stuff, and my own website as well, with loads and loads of articles and things about all sorts of spiritualist subjects that you might be interested in. And that big book's got some workshops in that you can do on your own, and it tells you all the various services that we have, and stuff. And I think the biggest thing that we have to do is educate the general public who don't know about spiritualism, and especially those who are of the Christian religion and feel that they're not allowed to be spiritualists or something, because let's try and get that sorted out as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll pop up links there to Lyn's book and to Lyn's website also for people to review later and come back to. Absolute delight, Lyn. I'm just entranced by your energy. It really comes over, and it's beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I hope you've all had a pleasant evening and enjoyed it. Next Wednesday, we welcome back Simon James to be talking, and his topic is spiritualism in the 21st century, and that's also so so if you're around next Wednesday,
the Simon James? Is that the Simon James? Oh,
the Simon.
wow. Oh,
I
wow.
know.
Give him my love then.
I will.
Simon James has the wonderful waistcoats.
Yes. Yeah. And we share a love of Star Wars. But yeah, I mean, it's just awesome that all you really wonderful people are gifting us your time to just share some of your knowledge and upliftment and words. And as you quite rightly say, it's all about education, because as we listen, as we hear all these different speakers, some will resonate, some will not. That's fine, absolutely fine. There is not one fit all. Go with what you feel drawn to. So people out there listening.
Oh, and may I just give you a plug for my dear friend Colin Fry?
Yes,
because he was actually, in amongst it all, what was forgotten or perhaps not known was that he was actually the education officer for the Noah's Ark Society. That's a society that promotes physical mediumship.
Oh yes.
And he was the education officer for that.
Yeah.
So, people only know Colin from sort of the television, but he was a jolly good medium and very, very knowledgeable. So,
yeah.
And he's up there now.
I did see him demonstrate down this way. He put on an evening of trance with Magnus, wasn't it? His guide.
That's right. Yes, a Bognor.
Yeah.
He was a Bognor. I think it was Bognor Church.
Yeah.
Years ago. Excellent.
Wonderful demonstrator. A real credit to Spirit influence.
Yeah. And a pity that he's only known now for his flaming television appearances.
Yeah, that is sad.
Never mind.
We'll all be famous one day.
Infamy. They've all got infamy. And on that note, I'd like to say God bless to everybody. Thank you very much for those of you tuning in and for your questions. And I hope that you've had an interesting evening. And I never mind if people want to message me with any questions and things like that. When I can manage, I'll answer and so on.
Wonderful.
God bless.
Thank you. God bless. And God bless everybody for watching tonight. And we'll see you during the week for one of our many